Rolando Cruz is on death row, convicted in the 1983 rape and murder of 10-year-old Jeanine Nicarico. Like almost everyone else on death row, he says the police got the wrong man. That's not surprising. What is surprising, however, is that throughout the 10-year history of this case, some of the people you would think would most want to keep him on death row, detectives, a police chief, and even one of the prosecutors, also think they got the wrong man. Next week, the Illinois State Supreme Court could say who's right. In the state of Illinois, they call death row the condemned unit. But after nearly 7 years, Rolando Cruz refuses to see himself as one of the condemned.
It's not easy to constantly be positive, constantly have faith. It's hard, but you have to.
On February 25, 1983, Jeanine Nicarico was home from school with a sore throat. At noon, her mother came from the office to make her lunch.
Then about 3 or 3:15, got the call from a neighbor that my other daughter had come home and found the door had been broken into, the house had been broken into, and Jeanine was gone.
Police found nothing missing from the house except Jeanine and a blanket. Tom Knight was the first prosecutor in the case and oversaw the police investigation.
So you think it was a burglary that went bad, spiraled downhill?
Correct. It's a burglary that they found the girl and just took her instead, and it was more like probably like a pack of dogs.
Jeanine's body was found 2 days later in the overgrown brush beside a hiking trail. The police investigated for more than a year before making arrests. Despite 3 eyewitnesses seeing a lone white male, 2 Hispanics are now in prison for the crime, Rolando Cruz and Alex Hernandez. How did Cruz and Hernandez become key suspects even though no physical evidence linked them to the murder and neither had a record of violent crime? Well, Hernandez went to the police with a story he says he made up, hoping to get a piece of the $10,000 reward. In one of the stories, he mentioned Cruz, and the police started to question both of them. The police decided Cruz and Hernandez knew too much about the details not to have been involved. Starting out as would-be informants in the investigation, they ended up being tried and convicted for the rape and murder of Jeanine Nicarico.
I did not participate in the break-in, the kidnapping, rape, any of it, murder, none of it. None of it all.
Did you see any of it?
No.
Did you know anything about it?
Nope. Not until the police came and talked to me about it. I didn't know nothing at all about it.
You made some pretty incriminating statements during the police investigation. Why did you say those things at that time?
Nobody took the investigation serious, because we're all just a bunch of young, smart-ass street punks. And it wasn't nothing where, okay, this is real serious, we have to be serious about it, better not lie about it. Nobody paid attention to that, you know? I mean, nobody thought about it that way.
If Rolando Cruz is executed, you're convinced that the state would be executing the man who raped and murdered Jeanine Nicarico?
One of them.
No doubts whatsoever?
No doubts.
3 months after the trial that convicted Cruz and Hernandez, another little girl in a neighboring town was also found raped and murdered. This man, Brian Dugan, confessed. This woman saw a connection between Dugan and the Nicarico murder.
I began to realize that the things that happened were so similar.
Eloise Sook, a secretary in the church just up the road from the Nicarico house, contacted the police to tell them she had talked to Brian Dugan the day Jeanine Nicarico disappeared.
I really felt that someone should be aware of the fact that he was in that neighborhood that day.
It had been years since you had seen him. How could you remember his face so well?
I noticed that one eye was smaller than the other, his left eye. And it stood out in my mind because I remember that I have a daughter that has an eye like that.
How significant is it that she talked to Dugan on that day?
I believe it's very significant. Eloise Sook puts Brian Dugan about 7/10 of a mile from the Nicarico home during the time Jeanine was abducted.
Major Ed Sosowski, a former area commander for the Illinois State Police, says he was told by Brian Dugan that he and he alone kidnapped, raped, and killed Jeanine Nicarico.
I was skeptical at first.
In all, Dugan was willing to confess to 6 rapes and 3 murders on the condition that he be given immunity from the death sentence. In 5 cases, the authorities agreed. but the prosecutors in the Nicarico case said no. So Hezakya and the state police decided to conduct their own investigation, which included 4 interviews, a polygraph, and this videotaped confession when Dugan was under hypnosis.
You're going to find yourself more and more deeply relaxed.
Dugan's confession contained over 50 details that matched the Nicarico kidnapping and assault. He described the inside of the house, accurately remembering the layout and color of several rooms. Although he was wrong on some facts that the prosecution sees as key, Captain Hezakya found his confession remarkably accurate.
Grade Brian Dugan's confession on a scale of 1 to 10.
The confession? It's a 10.
What most impressed Hezakya were facts that Dugan couldn't have made up or changed, like his car. It matched the one seen near the hiking trail down to the missing hubcap. And his work record showed that he had missed work on the very day Jeanine Nicarico disappeared.
He says to you that he didn't show up to work on February 25th, 1983, the day of the murder.
That's right.
And that is true.
That was corroborated by timeclock records.
He claimed that he kicked the front door in twice.
That was corroborated by FBI lab.
He gave a fairly accurate, detailed description of the house.
He gave a very accurate description of the interior house.
Some people might say there are a lot of coincidences there.
I don't believe in coincidences, then.
What would you say?
I'll say those are facts that can't be disputed.
If Brian Dugan had confessed to this crime before Cruz and Hernandez had been convicted, this case would have been one of the easiest murder investigations in DuPage County history.
Larry Marshall is Rolando Cruz's lawyer. He says Dugan's confession should have been enough to prove Cruz's innocence.
They had everything. They had confessions by Dugan, and what they had, moreover, was Dugan knowing scores and scores of facts that no one could have known about the crime.
All of this came forward after a much publicized trial, and I'm unaware of any details that could not have been gleaned from the publicity concerning the trial and or inside information from the trial itself.
So he could have picked this up in the newspapers or on television?
Television, newspapers, in the trial, or from some participant.
If he fabricated, how does he coincidentally miss work the day of the abduction, have a car that matches in make, model, color? He matches the physical description of the individual seen on the prairie path. His DNA matches. His shoe size matches the footprint on the door, and he's seen in the neighborhood during the time of the abduction. Those are facts that you can't dispute.
Tom Knight says that even if Dugan did do it, he thinks Cruz and Hernandez were involved in the murder.
What stands out is the fact that they made numerous statements which contained details that only should have been known to those people who were involved.
I told them different things. Everything they checked out proved out to be a lie. Everything they checked that I told them proved to be a lie, and they knew it.
Records of the case show that for much of the investigation, there were 5 statements taken from Rolando Cruz, all of them recorded. And in each of these statements, his description of the murder conflicted with the known facts of the case. Then, just 4 days before trial, the prosecution announced that the police had just remembered a 6th statement by Cruz. They said it had been taken 18 months earlier when he was very emotional and crying as he told them about a dream or a vision of the murder. This time, some of the facts did match the murder, but unlike the earlier statements by Cruz, this one was not recorded or even written down. His attorney told me he finds the detective's story hard to believe.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that Rolando Cruz, in the biggest case in DuPage County history, finally came into your office, and you're telling me he was emotional, and he was crying, and he was doing what you claim is tantamount to a confession in terms of his guilty knowledge, and you decided not to make notes, and you decided not to tape it? Ed, that's like my telling you that on the way over to this interview, I walked past $1 million in a briefcase, and I decided I'd get it on my way back home.
Did you ever tell the DuPage County detectives about a vision or a dream you had of the murder?
I never told them anything like that.
You never told them that?
Nope.
There are 2 detectives who sworn under oath that you did tell them that.
Right. But I never told them that.
Why would two seasoned police officers lie?
I think that the best I can say is that a lot of this investigation and a lot of the misconduct surrounding this investigation was done at a time when they thought they were framing the guilty person.
John Sam thinks that's probably true. He was a police detective who worked on the original investigation.
We searched and searched through here days and days looking for some type of murder weapon, which we never found.
Sam quit the force shortly before Cruz went to trial. He says his partners, who said they took the vision statement, never told him anything about it.
You're going to come back and not tell your fellow workers that this happened?
And you were working closely with these guys?
Every day, every day.
I mean, this vision statement would seem to me, if I'm an investigator, as a, I got you.
Oh, yeah, I sure would too. Anything that you would hear about this case would be very important, especially if one of your suspects is making a vision statement. I can't believe for the life of me that that's not important.
The fact is that all the circumstances were brought to the attention of the jury when I had the case, only the jury also had the benefit of hearing the witnesses themselves. I mean, I've tried cases for many, many years, and the one thing it's taught me is the humility to realize that jurors basically decide cases on facts.
In 1988, Rolando Cruz was given a second trial. In his defense, his lawyers wanted Brian Dugan to testify, but Dugan demanded immunity. The judge and the prosecution refused. The judge also ruled the jury could not hear any description of Dugan's 5 previous sex offenses. Larry Marshall says that information was crucial to prove that Dugan acted alone.
This wasn't the case of a burglar. Dugan always acted alone because sex criminals act alone. Dugan was a pedophile who in the past had engaged in this very same kind of crime, including the rape, kidnapping, and murder of an 8-year-old girl. The jury never heard any of that. The jury was never told that Brian Dugan's history was that of a sex offender.
There are all types of circumstances where evidence is not allowed to be heard in cases.
When Cruz appealed to the state Supreme Court, Roland Burris, the Attorney General of Illinois, oversaw the prosecution. The first prosecutor he assigned, Mary Kinney, resigned after conducting an investigation. She said in her resignation letter she could not sit idly as this office continues to pursue the unjust prosecution and execution of Rolando Cruz. Burris says it's not her job to decide Cruz's innocence. It's the jury's, and the jury has spoken.
They believed, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Rolando Cruz committed this. That is our system, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Do whatever you can do before you kill me for something I did not do. Shouldn't you put him on the stand? I mean, if you're going to say Brian Dugan's a liar, put him on the stand and prove he's a liar.
The truth has got to surface, and the truth is that Brian Dugan is the sole perpetrator of the abduction, rape, and murder of Jeanine Nicarico.